Just arrived at Battlefield Park in Richmond, Kentucky. This park is situated on the old battlefield, which took place here in August 1862, more specifically August 29th and 30th, and was considered one of the most lopsided victories for the Confederacy of the war, and as one historian said, was the closest to a cani of the ancient world in which Hannibal destroyed a Roman army that you would ever get in the Civil War. And particularly what happened was Confederate forces under General E. Kirby Smith were moving from northern Tennessee into southern Kentucky alongside General Braxton Bragg moving up closer to Bowling Green, Kentucky off to the west. And eventually on the 29th of August, Confederate forces stumbled into Union skirmishers to the south of this area down here. And that involved a slight skirmish with few casualties. Both sides retired and the Confederate forces began to move up. One of the Confederates' main units was forces under General Patrick Cleburne. He was a brigadier general at this time, Irish immigrant who settled in Arkansas and became one of the highest ranking officers in the Confederate Army in the West, specifically the Army of Tennessee. And he would be instrumental for the Confederate victory here on these 2 days. So what happened eventually was Confederate forces moved up their forces. Federal forces set up actually the defensive line right in this area over here. And the Confederates actually began to press them from the south. And what happened was there's a ravine out here off to the west. And the Confederate forces were able to move the forces into this ravine. And then they were able to flank the Federal forces on their right flank over here, the Confederate left or the Federal right flank. And that collapsed the Union line and pushed them back to the north, back towards Richmond. And they would keep pushing them back. Eventually, the Federals would set up a third line just south of Richmond in the cemetery, but even that eventually would be overwhelmed. And after the battle, Confederate cavalry was able to circle around and get ahead of the Union forces retreating, and they ended up capturing about 4,000 of them by the end of the day on the 30th. It was the most lopsided victory for the Confederacy during the war, and these 4,000 prisoners will be marched to Richmond, where they'll be interred for quite some time. So, a little lesser known battle of the American Civil War, but in tactical sense, it was a brilliant operation conducted by General Kirby Smith, as mentioned, with the help of Patrick Cleburne. And a little side fact is that General Cleburne was actually badly wounded here. He took a bullet to his mouth, it ripped out several of his teeth, and those teeth are actually still housed here. They were recovered on the battlefield, and a little gruesome memento of what happened in 1862. But walking this area certainly gives you a sense of what happened at the time, even though it's very peaceful today. If you think about, 15,000 plus soldiers amassed in this area across the south, this area, and then moving further north, it's quite humbling, because I don't know about you, but I would never want to live or develop a place like this, given the history and what would happen here, or what did happen. But just another fun fact, this is the Battlefield Park in Richmond, Kentucky. Highly recommend you visit it, and a bit of a hidden gem in many cases. So with that, I'll be back and discuss more about this battle at a later date. Signing off for now.